Oh, cool. Someone's recording for us. Good. Okay. Welcome to our class this morning on our combo class of visioneering and goal setting. I was telling Jackie before we got started, since our first class, we weren't able to get the technical stuff rolling. We decided to do a combo class today. So I'm going to start out with visioneering, which would have been our class 2 weeks ago, the first one. And then we will throw in the goal setting stuff. So I'm going to try to combine both of those classes into 1 hour. So we'll get it in there, but please feel free. This is meant to be interactive. So ask questions, get involved however I can help you. You can throw stuff up in the chat. I'll try to keep monitoring the chat. It gets a little bit, actually, Camilla, if you see something pop up in the chat, will you let me know? Because sometimes when I share the slides, the chat doesn't show up. But we will do our best. Thank you. Okay. Hold up. I need to get Tawny. Tawny didn't make us host here. I cannot.
Sorry.
That's there. Okay. I'm like, I can't share my screen. Help.
Gosh. Of course, someone comes in here right when. Okay. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Sorry. There you go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. All right. I think most of you know me pretty well, so I'm going to skip introductions here about who I am. But I did want to talk a little bit about the visioneering and what visioneering means to me. It's a term that I love. I've actually been using it for quite a while, several years, and then found out there was actually a book with the name engineering, or visioneering. So I thought that was kind of funny. I thought I coined the phrase, but apparently someone beat me to it. So, but I love visioneering. So vision to me means the ability to think about or plan the future with imagination or wisdom. And then if we add in engineering to that, to be a visioneer, I love this, the action of working artfully to bring your vision into reality. So it's about being intentional with the things that we're putting out there as we're creating a vision for our lives. I don't know if any of you have ever made a vision board. I did my first one when I was probably 22 or 23 years old. My husband and I put one together. And I don't really remember a ton about it, except for that we had some mentorship in our lives that said, oh, do a vision board or dream board. It's a great idea. So we just, went through magazines because it was back in the day before digital computers and printing. And we cut out pictures that we loved and, put them up on this board. And I don't really remember much of what we put on there, except for one thing that I had on there because it was very, very dear to my heart. And I really wanted to have a center for women and teen girls to come and build their self-esteem, rebuild their self-worth, and just kind of figure out who they are. And in my head, I thought this was going to be like a therapy center or something of that nature. So I had found a picture of a red brick building that represented this facility for myself, and I put it up on my board, and I knew exactly how much it was going to cost, how much I was going to need to pay the therapist, what I was going to need to have to be able to invest in this. And I just kind of threw it up there, and it sat for several years. And I think, in fact, we put it somewhere that we could see it all the time, and we walked around our house and saw it every day. And then, of course, we moved once or twice, and it got shuffled, and I didn't ever see it again. And I didn't really think anything of it because I hadn't done another one in quite some time. And fast forward a few years, about 9 years ago, I opened a fitness studio in Sandy. And one of the days I was in there cleaning up after our classes, I was in vacuuming the carpets, and we had a really large, about 40-foot by 40-foot square room with black carpet that I had to meticulously vacuum to get all of the little things up that show up on that carpet. So I was just kind of in almost like a meditative state as I was vacuuming the carpets. And I remember very distinctly this impression coming in. It was clear as day that it was, this is the facility you put on your vision board all those years ago. It isn't what you thought it was going to be, but this is how it needs to be. And this is what you're going to do to help empower and rebuild women and teen girls. And just was such a powerful thing to me to be able to experience that 10 years 12 years after doing that first vision board, not even having thought about it for years. But the thing was, I didn't have any idea of what transpired from the years that I sat staring at my vision board and every day, until I actually was able to make it come to fruition without even intentionally doing it, without realizing what I was doing. And so as my life progressed and I started to dig into things, I was able to actually figure out what it was that was that actual turning point for me, that I was able to take something that I had envisioned and looked at every single day, and how to actually transition it into reality. I think a lot of us have studied the law of attraction. I think especially in the real estate world, because that is something that's very heavily taught, no matter where you're at, but especially in real estate. And I really believed in that, but I didn't realize that there was actually some components missing. And so that was the thing. Most of us aren't aware there's actually 12 laws of the universe. There's not just the law of attraction, there's 11 other laws. And the law of attraction does not work without at least 2 of the other laws. So the law of action and the law of vibration. And once I learned the trick of that, and we'll talk a lot about that through this class, that was actually the secret sauce to making my visions come to life. So that's a little bit about what this first part's going to be about. And I want to tell you a little bit about my journey and how I discovered some of these things. So like I mentioned, in 2013, I opened my fitness studio. And during that course, I had some really wild experiences in my business. We had started out as part of a franchise. And a couple of years into owning this franchise, we realized this was really not a good place for us. The franchise was not a good thing. And we really just wanted to make a go of it on our own. And so we decided to break away from the franchise, restructure some things, and see if we could make this work ourselves. Because under the franchise, at the time I had 2 locations, and we were losing about $20,000 to $25,000 every month, was just like going out of my bank account. And what I had planned for having 5 to 6 years of working capital in an account was gone within 5 months. And so it was a very, very stressful situation. And we decided to break away, rebrand, and create our own thing. And in that process, of course, we had some legal battles and just different things that came up. And when we came out of that process, I was in debt, business debt, $863,000. So that didn't include my house, it didn't include my cars, any of my personal debt. And I was in a position where I was just, the stress level was I can't even bring myself back there, but it was such a terrible place, and my mindset was in such a bad place. And the only way I could survive the day-to-day and even make it like just getting through each day at a time was to start to focus in on what I could control and what I had within my power. And I had to be able to learn meditation. I started studying all of these things just to keep my own sanity. So I really dove in and became a very good student of these teachings, and everything I could learn, I was just trying to get my hands on so that I could take control of my life and my situation. And ultimately, I spent probably 3 or so years in this very hard place where I was in a space of blame. I was in a space of just scarcity. I mean, I was afraid to like spend $1 on an app in my phone. I was afraid to look at my bank accounts would give me anxiety. And so I had to take responsibility for that and understand that the only way I was going to move forward and the only way I was going to heal and get out of that situation is if I took radical ownership over my situation. I had to be the one to get myself out, because no one was responsible for putting me into that position except for myself. And that was kind of the turning point for me. I had to take away the blame. I had the anger I had for the franchisor. I had to take away the anger I had towards our attorney that messed up our case. I mean, all of these things that just added up, that the whole time I was just blaming them, and no one was coming to rescue me. And ultimately, I was responsible for creating the reality that I was in. And the beautiful thing about that is being able to shift that energy from poor me and take myself out of shame, which is the lowest vibration, into this empowered space where I was capable and fully capable of getting myself out of that situation, was a huge, huge shift for me. So once you can realize what the situation you're in and figuring out, like, the energy that's associated around blame is a very, very low frequency, very low vibration. You can't get out of that situation. You can't heal from that if that's the energy that you're putting out. So once I realized that, I wanted to understand how my mind worked and how I could then change my mind and change the programming I had in my mind in order to get myself into a better situation. So I really started digging in and learning about how my mind works and different things through different trainings and books and all sorts of things. Like I said, I really dove in. A lot of the things, that Camilla that's on is a master NLP trainer. She is amazing. And one of the things I love that NLP teaches is how the human brain processes information. And the human brain is really like a giant computer. And it filters things for us in a very fast manner because we are bombarded. Our nervous system is bombarded with bits of information. Every second, we have about 11 million different pieces of information that are hitting our nervous system, and our brain has to sort through that. We're only able to be consciously aware of about 126 bits per second. So our brain acts like a super filtering computer that in a nanosecond can put things into files or compartments for us so that we don't have to do that and have the overwhelm that would be basically hitting our system at every second. The beautiful thing about that is because that it has filed things for us, is it makes a lot of decisions and we have a lot of actions that are done at an unconscious level, versus the more things that we can bring into a conscious level, we can change that reality. So I love being able to bring awareness to the patterns that we have in our life, because if we're not aware of these things, if we're not aware of a pattern, then we don't have a choice. But once we bring awareness brings choice to our life. So bringing awareness to the fact that our mind has been filing things away, and essentially we are very unaware of 99.999% of the information that's coming into our system at any given time. I love elephants, and I want to talk to you a little bit about maybe an analogy that'll help make sense of this to me. Elephants are such an amazing creatures, and I was able to spend time with them in South Africa, and they really have just become near and dear to my heart. So I use them in my stories and analogies whenever I can. But if you were to imagine that you were blindfolded and I took you up to an elephant blindfolded and walked you around to the elephant's tail and placed your hand on that elephant's tail and asked you to describe for me what you're experiencing, you're going to describe the elephant's tail. And now anytime you come into a similar situation, your brain automatically is going to tell you, here we are again at the elephant's tail. And you're going to relive those experiences as though it is current, even though it's pulling from your past. And every time your brain is trying to file you into that elephant's tail. The problem is you have an entire elephant that you haven't been able to see and visualize yet. So you have the ability, once you have that choice, that opens you up to being able to say, oh, here I am, my brain is putting me at the elephant's tail again, but I want to choose to go to the elephant's trunk. I want to choose to go up to the tusk and the face and have a better experience or a different experience than what my brain has told me. And then that way you can start to be intentional and understanding about the situations that are coming into your life and how you are viewing the circumstances. Because how we perceive the world around us is what creates our reality. Once we understand that, you get to choose what your reality is. And that's the beautiful thing. So let's talk a little bit about those universal laws that I mentioned at the beginning. So we talked about the law of attraction. Before I knew about the other laws, I used to say that the law of attraction could not work without action, because I realized what that secret sauce was to me turning that goal into reality without even realizing what it was. I can sit and stare at my vision board every day and meditate by it every day, but until I go out and start to take action towards it, the universe is not going to open things up for me. So taking that action is what actually helps you. So once I learned that there was actually 11 other laws of the universe, and I learned about the law of action, that made so much more sense to me, and as to why I was then able to start bringing to pass the things that I had put on my vision board. And the other one is the law of vibration. So I want to talk to you about how you can utilize all three of these together so that you can start to actualize your reality and make it your life. Okay. So vibration is the first one that we'll talk about. We've touched on action a little bit, but vibration is probably the one that's a little more confusing. Vibration is the frequency that our energy body resonates at. So what that means basically is that as humans, as anything in the world, we know that we're made up of atoms. Everything in the universe is made up of atoms. We used to think that atoms were a solid particle of matter. But we know now that atoms are actually 99% energy, 99.99 something percent energy. That's why if you split an atom, you get energy that's released. That's how the atomic bombs, nuclear energy, all of that stuff works through the splitting of atoms. So there's so much energy contained in those particles that when you open them up, it creates a massive amount of energy. So once you understand that, it makes perfect sense to know that we are energetic beings. So even though things are solid, we feel like, this is the end of my hand, the end of my body. We feel like we're solid. We're actually not. We're made up of different vibrational frequencies, and we vibrate at different frequencies at the quantum level. So the beautiful thing about this is the higher that you elevate your vibrational frequency, the more you're able to attract into your life, the better your body feels, your physical body, your emotional body, all of these things, you experience greater power, clarity, peace, and everything. So the trick is to learn how to harness your energy and how to elevate your vibration so that you're attracting in the things that you want in your life. And the way that we do that is through signals. So our body sends out signals. So I love this quote from Abraham Hicks. If you know of her, she's amazing. But it says, the universe does not hear what you're saying. It feels the vibration you're offering. And so when we're out of alignment in the things that we say versus the things that we do and the vibration that we put out, the universe gets mixed signals and is not sure what to give us and what to hand us when we're working for things. So I believe that our bodies put out 6+ different signals. And I want to just touch on each of these really quickly so it'll help give you a better understanding of how to master the signals that your body is sending out. So when we talk about these signals, we want to talk about like, who do I need to, or what do I need to do? And who do I need to be in order to send one single solid signal to the universe? That way, we're not sending these mixed signals through our body. So thinking about those, what are some things maybe that you can bring awareness to that will help you take action and that will help you change who you are in order to send out that single signal and bring yourself into alignment? So the first one is our cellular energy. Our body's cells send signals, and this can be affected by a lot of different things. We know how neurotransmitters work and neuropeptides and all of these things, that the thoughts and the things that influence our cells at a cellular level, but as well as the things that we are putting into our bodies, what we're eating, how we're treating our bodies, those will all affect the health of our cells and the signal that our cells actually send out. The second one is our thoughts. The thoughts that we send out actually are signals to the universe. So being very mindful of those and starting to bring more awareness around the thoughts that we're having, and making sure that the thoughts that we're having, if we catch ourselves in in a negative thought or belief, how do we switch that so that we can say, okay, catch myself here, what do I want instead? And put out that new signal to the universe as quickly as possible so that we continue to put out that flow. The third one is beliefs. Thoughts and beliefs can be very interwoven. Beliefs, I think, go a little bit deeper. So they may not be things that you even consciously think about. They may be things that are so ingrained into your body and your DNA that it doesn't even recognize for you anymore. So those can be a little bit more challenging to bring to the surface, but very, very powerful, because what we believe is actually what creates our reality. So again, the more we can bring into awareness, the more quickly we can bring change into our lives and to bring to pass the things that we want in our lives. The fourth one is our emotions. Our emotions send out massive signals. So being very aware of our emotions, and if we have anything that we're projecting out that is a negative emotion, to be able to change our state and our mindset very quickly so that we can send out the positive emotions that we want to have. And that's not to say that we won't experience any negative emotions or negative feelings. It's more about learning how to harness that and manage it closely while still sending out the signals that you want to the universe. Because there are times that warrant, anger or sadness in the moment. And as long as we're not bringing back up the past and projecting that out, we can manage it closely and continue to send a good positive single signal to the universe. Our words are the other. This is a big one. A lot of times the things that we say, the things that come out of our mouths, again, bringing awareness to what those are and changing as quickly as possible the words that we hear and the words that we say. If there is something that comes up that is not in alignment for you, I recommend very quickly and audibly just saying, I do not receive that. And just giving your mind permission to let it go and not absorb what's coming in, whether you say it or not, just get it out and clear up the words. And again, be very mindful of the things that we are saying from our mouths. And the last one is actions. So when we are, this is probably one of the biggest ones too, because when we sit and meditate on our vision board, we can look at it every day, but until we get up and take action, our action is actually not going to, our action is what is going to move us towards our goals. So making sure that we're taking actions every day. Does anybody have questions or anything so far? We're good? Okay, cool. The next one is to be clear on what you want. And this goes twofold. I think oftentimes we are not clear on what we want and we don't ask for things, or we're very generic about things when we ask. So I could go out and set my goal and say, I want to make more money this year. And I could walk outside my front door and find a $5 bill on the ground or a $1 bill or a penny. And technically the universe is like, okay, I gave you what you wanted. You asked for more money, versus being very, very clear about what we want. So I like to use the analogy, if you were going to go to a restaurant, you've got to be able to tell your waiter or waitress exactly what you want on your order. You need to tell them what you want to drink. You need to tell them if you want ice or no ice, if you have anything special you want to order on your hamburger, or if you want something left off, if you want add-ons, whatever. Be very, very, very specific about what you want. Nobody wants to go out and hear, if you had a waitress come up to your table and you said, well, I know I don't want a Diet Coke, and I know I don't want cheese, and I don't want lettuce. They're going to be like, okay, I'll be back, right? So you've got to be very, very clear and specific on what you want. The other thing too, and I love this analogy, again, Camilla uses this analogy with an elephant, and because I love elephants, we can talk about elephants. But if I told you, don't think about a purple elephant, your brain is actually going to think about this purple elephant, whether you saw it on the screen or not. You have to consciously think about it to not think about it. So our brain does not understand negations. And this is something that took me a long time to figure out. I think on several vision boards, I used to put get out of debt, or no debt, or like all of these things. And all my brain saw and heard was debt. right? And somehow I managed to amass $863,000 of business debt because my brain was focused on the debt. Versus if I flip it and say exactly what I want and focus on the positive of that, I can focus on having maybe $863 in my, or $63,000 in my bank account, because at that point I know that I have either paid off the debt or I have the ability to pay off that debt. But when we focus on the thing we don't want, that's exactly what comes into our life, and more so. So if you have anything on your vision board or in your goals that is a negation, I challenge you to look at that and see how you can phrase it in a positive light. Just like when we're taught, when we're going skiing, if you focus on the trees, when you go through the trails, you're going to hit the trees because you're watching the trees. Focus on the trail and where you want to go. It's the same principle. So make sure you're very clear and putting the things in there that will give you a positive outcome. Okay, so once you have a very clear picture, you've got your vision set, you've got your goal set, I practice a daily visualization and projection. So when I am doing my meditation, I actually choose music that hypes me up. I will do a set of my meditation music that is more like gets me in a peace and calm feeling. And then I end my meditation with music that hypes me up, that actually brings my physical body into the vibrational level that I want to be, to project out the things that I want to bring into reality. So that is something that I do every day. The next thing you want to do is take daily action. So our actions every day need to be calculated, and they need to be intentional, and we need to be doing things that'll move us towards our goals. And there, what I'm going to do here is switch over to the goal setting sheets and talk about how to create a plan
Shantel, you're on mute.
That's weird. Thank you. I didn't mean to push that. I would say I was just reading through some of the comments that I was able to catch up on before we switch over slideshows. I love this comment here, Camilla. How does one know if we're out of alignment? So a lot of that comes with the learning of your body and the signals that your body is sending you. And when you can trust in your intuition and your feeling, you know when you're out of alignment. If you're saying one thing, doing one thing, and feeling another. I mean, I even had an experience recently where I felt like I was really kind of out of alignment for myself, where I was working for a company, which a lot of you know, and every day I was going in and I just knew this was not what I was supposed to be doing. And every day I still kept doing it. And I was afraid to have that tough conversation with myself, to bring myself to that place I could step away and just be uncomfortable for a minute to bring myself back into alignment. But once you start being in tune with yourself, you know very quickly if you're out of alignment. I feel you probably experienced the same, I would say. Yeah. Let's see. And Brandon said, the only issue I ever have is making a concerted effort to eliminate a negative thought. I have to literally state a positive to counter the negative thought with a statement. Fortunately, I don't have negative thoughts too often, but when I do, you might hear me talking to myself. Yeah, I think we all do that. And I think there's something very positive. I love what Camilla said. That's awesome, Brandon. Where you can break yourself away. Sometimes it takes physically saying something. Like I said, I do not receive that. Saying it out loud and doing something, like you said, to shift it out. And there, you really do need to combat that negative with a positive. And I would even say reinforce it with 5 or 6 positives so that you can really overcome and give yourself something to replace it with. And then Brandon also said, I understand when I feel like I'm out of alignment, but I don't always know where to go or who to talk to. For example, I don't want to go to the doctor, which is totally fair. But yeah, I think sometimes having a peer group or people that you maybe like a mastermind group, coaches, like those are all people that I think you should have in your court to feel like you can talk to them about how you're feeling out of alignment and maybe somebody's outside perspective on how to help you bring back into alignment. And sometimes it helps just to have somebody that you can bounce these things off of, but I would always have somebody in your inner circle. Jackie, I love that too. Isn't it accurate that you need 10 positive thoughts to overcome the negative? And then, yeah, you just answered it. So, yeah, I think it's just bringing that into awareness, because if we're not aware of something, we don't have choice in it. So the more that we can bring something into awareness, then we get to have choice. And that's when we get to really do some fun things and be intentional with our life. Okay, any other questions before we kick into goal setting? That was a lot to crunch out really fast. I felt like I was talking a mile a minute, but I want to make sure we can get both sets of information in here for you. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to kick into this next one here, this goal setting. Okay, so I love setting my goals in 12-week increments. There's a book I read by this Brian P. Moran that you'll see this top quote here. It's called The 12-Week Year. It's such a helpful book. I highly recommend it. But the way that he lays it out and the way that he structures this is so helpful for moving you through your goals. The biggest reason is because when we set goals for the year, oftentimes we act accordingly. We don't have a sense of urgency to the things that we're doing, not realizing that every day and every week is important. Instead, we tend to push things off, and ultimately we lose that effective action. And it comes down to like October, November, and all of a sudden we're in hustle mode because we're realizing we're coming up on the end of the year and we hadn't set in those consistent habits to carry us through. So it's better to think in shorter, faster timeframes, focused timeframes, so that you can get that in very quickly. And I love that this is coming on the heels of Visioneering, especially this time of year. I was very intentional about choosing these classes to be the first ones that we kick off, because the energy that we have right now with the springtime and what's coming in with, just what nature shows us, there's rebirth, there's new energy, people are revitalized. This is such a great time to kick this off. And the way a 12-week year is structured is that you take a week and plan. So you've got a couple of weeks actually lead time getting us up to the end of March to where you can actually get your goals really planned and laid out. And then you have that 12-week period to go out and execute on those goals. And then the week 13 is where you would then reevaluate and come back in and set your goals and your pace for your next 12 weeks. And you do that 4 times throughout the year. And that is what helps carry you through. So we're going to talk a lot about that in the next little bit. So steps to goal setting. The first one is to get clear on your why. And we'll go through these two. Then we're going to identify your goals for the 12 weeks, write them in SMART form. We'll talk about that if you're not familiar with that. We'll put together a plan on how to reverse engineer your goals. I'm really big on reverse engineering your goals and creating weekly action items, or what are also called KPIs, or key performance indicators. So the trick is to not get overwhelmed by the entire goal. Breaking it down is very, very helpful. And then you want to make sure you're blocking out your calendar, holding yourself accountable. We'll talk about setting up accountability meetings and how to create an accountability meeting for yourself. And then again, like I said, week 13 is how you assess your progress, assess where you're at, and tackle your next 12 weeks, okay? And then also, for those of you guys that are on, I'm going to email you guys out these 12-week plans. I will send you out these sheets. If you can put your emails in the chat, that will help me to get you these 12-week sheets, okay? Okay, so the first thing I want you to do when you're setting your goals is to get really clear on your why or your passion. Be really take some time here to be thoughtful about this and intentional about this, and dig in on your why. if you find yourself putting generic answers, there's a trick I learned years ago that they call it, go 7 deep on your why. So when you come up with a why that feels good to you, go deeper. Why is that important to you? And then again, go deeper again. Why is that important? Until you've gone 7 times. I've actually gone 14 times deep on my why, so that I can make sure that I'm clear and I'm in alignment, and that it's something that always it brings emotion to me. It's important to me. And so that's having a strong compelling passion or why is what's going to help propel you through to do the things every day. Okay. Does anybody have questions on that? Cool. Camilla, let me know if anything pulls up. Oh, I finally got the chat to pull up. So I think we're okay now. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about setting these goals and using these SMART goal sheets. So I have 3 SMART goal sheets in these forms that I'll show you. But we want to make sure we're not setting more than 3 goals. When we do that, our brains can be on overload. It's too much, and we are sending too many signals out. And I also will relate it to, I don't know if you've ever been driving in the car. I remember lots of times driving when my kids were little, and they're all arguing in the back seat or, playing or whatever they're doing. And it's like a blizzard outside, and I'm trying to drive and concentrate on the road. So I'll reach down and turn off my stereo. So because my brain is at maximum capacity. And does turning off my stereo help me do anything? No, it just helps remove one of the things that's like really clouding up my mind and giving it overload. So I always tell people, please do not focus on any more than 3 goals. 3 goals is a ton, especially when you are trying to keep track and get through all of the key performance indicators that you set for yourself. When you even have it for 1 goal versus 3, it's a lot to do. I think when we get overzealous sometimes in the beginning of our year, the things that we want to accomplish, those New Year's resolutions, and we're gung-ho about it, and we overwhelm ourselves because we've bitten off more than we can chew. So then we quit or we stop instead of honing in and picking maybe 1 or 2 at a time that we can really focus on and make those awesome before we check the next ones off. Okay. Once you have these, you're going to share them with your weekly accountability partners. And again, we'll talk about how to set up those groups in a moment. And then at the beginning and end of each day, review your why and your goals. Make sure you connect with them. This trains your brain to focus on your vision, and that way you're taking action towards those things. And then I always say, find ways to celebrate throughout the process. I think oftentimes we put our happiness in the future and we put the celebrations in the future, and that becomes really hard on your motivation and your willpower. So if you can celebrate the little wins along the way and map out what you're going to do as you celebrate to hit some of these little milestones, it makes it so much more achievable. Especially in America, we're such driven people, and we work so much that sometimes we can get fatigue on our goals and our work because we don't take those moments to celebrate. And this doesn't have to be anything big, just little moments of celebration so that you can remind your unconscious mind how powerful it is and that it's fun to do these things, and it keeps that willpower and that momentum going. Okay, these are the SMART goal forms, and in these sheets that you'll get, I do have 3 of them in there for you. So if you print it off, you'll have all 3. But again, like I said, you don't have to fill out all 3 forms. Is anyone unfamiliar with SMART goal format? Do you want me to review it, or does everybody feel like this is something they've gone over before and they understand well? Because I'm happy to do either way. Just please let me know. Okay. Okay, sounds like we understand. So just very briefly, making sure your goals are very specific. I always tell people set black and white goals. That means that you either did it or you didn't do it. You can't fudge your way through it. So if I'm putting together a presentation and I say, okay, I'm gonna put together 6 slides in my presentation this week. if I just go in and my goal was to say, I'm just going to work on my presentation, I might go in and add a couple pictures and change some things, and my brain thinks I did it and checked it off, but in reality, I didn't get as much done as I wanted to. So it's a way to make sure you're keeping on track and not getting off of track there. So make it something that you either did or you didn't do. It's very, very specific. It's very measurable. Make sure it's achievable. Make sure it's relevant and time bound. So all of those things are very important when we're doing our goals. Okay, so since we know those, I will skip through. Once you have your goals, then I like to go back through and create some weekly action items. So this is where you start to identify some of your key performance indicators. So these are the things that you have control over that you can do every day to move you towards your goals. So this might be things like phone calls, it might be emails, it might be events, networking, like you name it, whatever these action items are that you need to work on each day or each week, this is what we make the list. These are the things that we can track that are moving us towards our goal, okay? So again, I've got 3 of them in here for you. If you don't have 3 goals, that's fine. And then I always like to plan ahead. So these are the things that I want to take a moment and get really real with myself, have a good conversation with myself about where I'm going to struggle as I'm going through and trying to achieve my goals. If I know that I absolutely get frozen when I have to make like cold calls, which I don't, but there are a lot of people out there that get really nervous about those kind of things, then I'm going to put a plan in place to what I'm going to do when I know that those moments come up where I'm struggling to make those calls because it's just not in alignment for me. So maybe I have somebody I can reach out to. Maybe I can reach out to a coach or someone that's in my accountability group, or whatever. Or let's say I'm trying to eat better and I know that at night I will binge eat at night because I'm just tired and my brain is tired of fighting the resistance. So instead, if I know that what my body really needs is rest, then I make that commitment to myself to be in bed by a certain amount of time so that I can avoid the pitfalls that are going to come. So this is just being very aware of how we operate as a person, how you personally operate, how I personally operate, and just being able to plan ahead, because the reality is when these things come up, the struggles come up, they always do. How we handle them when we are faced with the adversity ultimately comes down to whether or not we have a plan in place to tackle it if it shows up. So making sure that we have a plan and we execute on it when the struggles arise. Okay, this is another set of ways to track your KPIs on how to format your goals as you go through the weeks. So sometimes we have things outside of our key performance indicators that maybe require a process in order to present itself. So let's say at the end of the 12-week period, I wanted to have a program in place to coach a new real estate agent that's coming onto my team. So the first thing I would need to do is, put my systems and processes together. Well, what does that look like? Okay, I have to know this before I can do this, and map out what that looks like so that you have those tactics and strategies in place. So you know what things you need to start, when you're going to start it, when it needs to be done, and when it's completed so you can move on to the next step in the process. Does that make sense? So a little bit different than your KPIs or your key performance indicators. These are actually like step-by-step processes in your roadmap. So if you are talking about reverse engineering your goals, you want to have that end goal in mind. And then we need to figure out the roadmap from the second you step your foot out the front door to the end destination. What are the things that I need to do to get there? And in what order do I need to do them? And when am I going to finish them so that you can move yourself through the process? Okay, and I have one of these also for the 3 goals. Okay, does anyone have any questions on those? And then if not, we can talk about setting up weekly accountability groups. Anybody? Okay, perfect. So I am a big fan of accountability groups and meetings. But I think there's a few tricks to how you go about putting this together. One of the things that I recommend is that you do not have someone in your group that you report to or that is over you in any way, because I think that clouds, it clouds how you present yourself in your accountability group. So you want to make sure that you don't have anybody that you're trying to impress or that you report to. This is strictly like peers holding each other accountable so that you can be very open and vulnerable and honest with them. I do recommend you meet once a week and get some people that are very driven, that'll show up and be accountable. So it'll help to hold you accountable to your goals. And it's very important that you have people to bounce ideas off of. You know, life happens, things happen. We want to make sure that we're moving people forward and that we're helping each other. So this is a form you're welcome to use that I have all of my accountability groups use. It's very simple, but it's very to the point. So each person in your accountability group will go through their sheet, address any questions or issues that they have, and then you can move on to the next person. So just reviewing your why or purpose with your group, what your 12-week goals are, what your action plan is for the upcoming week, and then diving into last week's action items. Did I stick to my game plan? Yes or no? If not, why was I unable? And what was more important to me than accomplishing my goals? And sometimes things come up that are definitely more important, that things happen and understand, but that's what your accountability group is there for, is to let you know, like, yes, this is a viable thing, or no, you can step it up and that you're just using that as an excuse. And you want people that'll hold your feet to the fire, but that you can be open and honest with. I love this next one. Where are you stuck and what is the root cause? What are you learning? So whether or not we achieve the goals for that week, if we are stuck or whatever, we always want to look for the learnings in it so that we can grow and move forward. And then moving through anything that we're getting stuck. Usually it's a mindset issue, it's a belief issue, something like that. So bring it to the surface, bring it to awareness so you can move through it, and then talk about your progress. And if you needed help with anything, did it get resolved? And you can move through with that. Okay, any questions on that? This should take you about 5 minutes per person that's in your group to run through this. So if you have about 5 people in your group, you know, you're looking at really like 15, 20 minutes-ish per group call. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay, this is weekly planning and tracking. Once you have your KPIs set and the things that you are looking at every week, your phone calls, your emails, your events, your networking, all of those things, write in this chart what the behavior and action is and what you did each day. So if your goal is 5 phone calls a day, 10 phone calls a day, whatever that looks like, maybe you have it separated out. Maybe you have 5 phone calls to your SOI, maybe you have 5 phone calls to new clients, and maybe you have like 5 prospecting calls, right? Like whatever that looks like for you. This would also be like any meetings you have, if you have scheduled listing agreements or showings, like whatever that looks like for you, however you're tracking your metrics. If you can consistently get in here and track these things, this will help you to see where your weak links are and where you need to switch some things up. So for example, if I know I'm making my 5 phone calls every day and I'm very consistent about it, but then I'm not converting those phone calls into meetings, I can very quickly see what my closing ratio is by checking those little metrics and making sure I'm moving people through my pipeline. So if I'm only closing, you know, or getting a meeting with maybe 1 out of every 10 people I'm calling, then that means that I need to be able to change what's going on the phone calls in order to increase the number of meetings that I get. The other way this is very helpful is once you have a pretty clear, consistent tally, you're able to use the percentages that you have for closings, even though you're working to improve things, your current settings, so that you can accurately set your goals. This is how you reverse engineer those goals. So if I'm looking at somebody from initial meeting or phone call all the way through to their listing agreement or their closing, then I know, okay, if I can backtrack this, how many phone calls did it take me to book how many appointments, and how many of those appointments showed or didn't show? And then of the appointments that showed, how many did I close? And that way you'll be able to say, okay, if I close 5 appointments out of every 15 phone calls that I make, then it helps me to know how many phone calls I have to make to hit my end goal. Does that make sense? I know it's kind of a lot, but these tracking sheets are super, super helpful. So they'll be very good if you guys can implement those in. And then of course, I'm always along the way as I'm going along week to week, adjusting. What do I need to fix? What were my wins? What were my losses? I like to be able to review these things. And then very quickly, I can look at my month overall. So if I take my month of all of those sheets and I know my total goal for all of my behaviors and actions, let's say it was like 27 and I achieved 25, then I know I did pretty well, right? And then I can assess what behaviors and actions was I most consistent with, and what positive differences did this have in my month. And then again, on the flip side, what was I inconsistent with? What do I need to improve? And what were the negative consequences this had on my results? So that way you can very, very quickly fine tune and move yourself forward as you're going through your month and working on your goals. And then just reviewing again, wins, losses, fixes, any aha moments you have, things you're most grateful for, and also lessons learned that you have from your study and practice. These little sheets are the last little tidbit I want to share with you because I love these things. I keep a stack of them on my desk. And at the end of every day, I just like to brain dump onto these papers, like everything that I didn't do that I absolutely need to get done for the next day, or whatever I've got going on that's carrying over. This does 2 things for me. One, I know that a lot of us work from home, especially in this industry. We're home a lot. We work at nights. We do a lot of crazy off hours things. And for me, this allows me to end my day and brain dump my day so that when I'm with my family, I can be more intentional with my time. And I can try to cut the ties and leave the office at the office. The other thing too is that helps me to not be stressed or thinking about things all night, because if I've written them down, I don't have to think about it. Or if it's something I can quickly add, then I don't have to let that consume space in my mind, taking up space for things that I can be doing otherwise. So if something pops up, I can add it to this sheet. That way I don't even have to think about it, and I'm not stressed about maybe I'll forget this tomorrow, or I've got to hurry and do this so I don't forget it. I can just get it down and take care of it the next day. So I think those are super helpful, and I've thrown those in there as well. Okay, so that is what I have for slides. I would love to field and answer any questions. I know we've got just a couple minutes left, but what questions can we answer and what can we help you guys with? And I'm going to stop the recording here too.